Today on Crunch Week, we're talking about more Tinder drama, Microsoft's new direction, and Lyft struggling to launch in New York City. Hey there, I'm Colleen Taylor.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Anthony Ha.
Anthony joining us from New York City for the day.
Yeah, I'm just in town for a few days and just dropped by Crunch Week, because why not?
It's really fun to have you.
Thank you.
I missed you, Anthony.
I missed you too, Ryan.
We're going to try and
I
to
missed
get him
you
to
more,
stay.
Colleen.
Yeah.
Thank you. I win the missing thing. But let's get right into it, because this was a huge story of the week. Our own Jordan Crook did a little bit of investigative reporting on the ongoing drama around Tinder, the dating app.
Right. She, I think, talked to a lot of anonymous sources who I think either were involved in or knew about Tinder's early history, and I think what she was, because this is the lawsuit that Whitney Wolf has filed against Tinder, and I think there's a lot of sort of different issues there, but I think one of the things she was particularly interested in was sort of this question of was Whitney unfairly stripped of her title of co-founder, and so it turns out that there's this sort of complicated, or at least what her sources explained to her was there's this complicated situation where she wasn't, legally a co-founder, but that they sort of let her use the title for a little bit, and then we're like, oh, this is a really bad idea, and so that kind of I think was sort of the seed of what gets eventually discussed in the lawsuit.
One good line I thought from the article was something about how Tinder when it started was like very casual, everyone was friends, it was this very casual workplace environment, but as the company matured, that culture didn't mature along with it, and in fact it even got more and more sort of juvenile and dangerous, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you read the story, and if you read the lawsuit, what's apparent is that all these people are kind of immature assholes. And if you read the story, it becomes even more apparent that these people are immature assholes. We got quite a bit of blowback at TechCrunch for, number one, the story kind of blames the victim a little bit in, a lot of people's perception. But also, we ran an announcement that Sean Rad, stupidly, ran an announcement that Sean Rad would be joining us at Disrupt.
And to be clear, it's not stupid that Sean is speaking at Disrupt. It's stupid that we announced that on the same day.
An hour later.
Yeah, which, to be clear, if this was all like this complicated plan to get Sean to speak at Disrupt,
This probably isn't the best way to do it.
It would, and we would have been more subtle about it.
Yeah.
If it's a conspiracy, it's a really badly run conspiracy. But I do want to say also that I kind of get where some of the criticism is coming from. That I think for a lot of us, we start from this assumption. Yes, we all agree that, especially in the lawsuit, there are these text messages from one of the co-founders of the company that are just really appalling and unprofessional, and he has been placed on leave. And I think that we all acknowledge that. I think for some of us, we kind of say, okay, we acknowledge that, now let's sort of talk about the other aspects of the story, and I think for some people that's not sufficient. That's kind of a way of dismissing it and not talking about what really is the issue, and I think that's fair to say, well, this question of the co-founder, this question of whether or not she got drunk at a, that's relevant, but that's not the main story, and I understand why some people would say that too.
Right.
I
think to be clear, just because Justin Medine is an asshole doesn't mean that Whitney Wolf can't also be an asshole.
Right.
And I think that's partly what comes out in Jordan's piece.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this all plays out when this goes to trial, if it goes to trial,
right.
If there's a settlement. It just seems sort of like a sad story. And the moral of it all to me seems to be, from day one, when you're being a company, you've got to be professional. Even if you want to be friends with people,
right.
You don't just. It's so absurd that anyone would say, oh, okay, you can use that co-founder title just for a day or for a certain news article
right.
or something.
Just use it when dealing with press, which I think also says something about their attitudes towards the press.
It doesn't really quite add up. So I don't know. It's just unfortunate, but hopefully a cautionary tale for other companies just getting started now. Next news, Microsoft?
Yeah, I think we're
going to talk
Microsoft.
about Microsoft. Microsoft CEO.
What is Microsoft again?
Right, yeah, big company, blue chip stock. But their CEO Satya Nadella wrote a really long email to his employees, and then Microsoft officially shared that on their company blog. I want to say 3,000 words or something. Really long, sort of purporting to be about Microsoft's future. and what he sees for the future of Microsoft. He, of course, just took over from Steve Ballmer, I guess, in February. So he's got an earnings call here coming up, quarterly earnings call in a couple weeks, and I think he just wants to kind of, put some ideas out there before the earnings come in.
Right. I mean, it seemed like to a certain extent to set up the earnings, say like we're going to be talking about this more at the earnings, and also trying, like you said, it was originally, or at least officially, it's a sort of an internal or an employee email or memo, and so I think it's about sort of also communicating that to the team and seeing, I guess, what they say.
Yeah, and communication is important. But I think that the strategy in doing this is a little bit strange. It's like this very flowery, very long message about vision and what he sees, and it's very, there's nothing concrete there. He says that the old Microsoft was sort of about devices and services, and in the future it's going to be about platforms and productivity. And these are all just kind of wishy-washy words to me.
Right.
We've got to see, are they going to
right.
cut a division? Are they going to buy another company? Are they going to make a new product? What is it that they're doing? We don't know yet.
I think it's a nice way for him to set up the fact that there's going to be serious organizational changes coming up, and that was kind of a nice way of him messaging that.
Right.
And the other interesting thing I think about it, which is funny, is that he basically got on the phone with every tech outlet. He talked to Alex Wilhelm here. He talked to, people at several other, tech publications, which is something that Steve Ballmer would have never done. He would have maybe messaged through the Wall Street Journal or some major magazine.
Right. Or it would have been a big conference call where everyone gets to ask one question or something like that.
Right. So yeah, I think that was kind of interesting as well.
I think that might be because he talked for a couple paragraphs in the screed about culture and how he wants Microsoft to be a company with a new kind of fresh culture, not like the old Microsoft. Get rid of some bureaucracy. He wants it to be a place where young, really smart, engineers fresh out of Stanford or MIT or whatever, that's their top choice, is to go work there. So I think maybe that's why he's trying to get the messaging out to TechCrunch or to CNET or wherever he perceives these young people are reading a little bit more rather than just the Wall Street Journal. And he said in the article that nothing is off the table when it comes to redoing their culture. So it could be some people need to watch out for their jobs, or I don't know.
Well, I guess it also makes me curious about that. It seems like it's trying to do these two different things of saying, A, we have a new vision, this is our new vision. B, nothing is off the table. Let's talk. And I mean, of course, then both things can be true, but there's a certain sense of wait, are you trying to say this is the vision, or are you saying that okay, now you're opening the doors and we're going to figure out what the vision is? And I don't know. Like you, I sort of read the whole thing, and I mean, I thought it was interesting, and there's some interesting ideas, but I couldn't distill it down. Okay, this is what Microsoft is doing, like you were saying.
Yeah, the one thing they're not doing though is selling Xbox, holding on to Xbox at least for now. That seemed to be the one clear message I could take from this thing.
Right.
But so Lyft in New York City.
Lyft is launching. Well, hopefully, Lyft hopes to launch in New York City a few hours after Crunch Week will run. But there's some question about it because it's Friday today. They have received an order, or temporary restraining order, from the New York Attorney General and the city's taxi cab commission, basically telling them not to launch. So it's still an open question of whether or not that will happen. I haven't seen the company state one way or the other if they still plan to launch in a few hours. But
I mean, they have to have known before that there were going to be these sort of legal challenges that they were going to have to be trying to get around, and so that they would be essentially be flying in the face of regulators, even before this specific order was issued, right?
Right. Well, I mean, what's interesting about it is, they launched pretty much everywhere else in the U.S. They're in 60 cities right now, and they kind of held off on launching in New York City until launching in Brooklyn and Queens specifically until now. And New York is a tough regulatory environment for startups. Relay Rides was shut down. Sidecar was, basically decided to suspend their service there. Airbnb has run up against problems with the New York Attorney General's office. So it's not an easy market for startups like this to enter. And they have a lot of work ahead of them.
Right, and I have to say that as the person who's visiting from New York, I was really excited when I saw they were going to launch because, it has been kind of a bummer that they're not there, and that I also really like their strategy of launching in Brooklyn and Queens because those are the areas that are just not as well served by either public transportation. I mean, New York public transportation is pretty great, but it's still not as well served and definitely not as well served by cabs. So I thought that was like a really smart strategy to focus on those areas. Of course, I live in Brooklyn too, so.
Who would you bet on? Are you betting that Lyft is ultimately going to be in New York City? That this is just sort of like a tussle here in a matter of time?
I think on the long road, they will be. It's just a question of what that looks like, how conversations happen with regulators. The regulator say it's a question of public safety, but Lyft makes a case that they hold their standards to. They hold their drivers to a higher standard than the current regulations, so they can't really make that argument. The taxi lobby in New York is obviously a very, very powerful lobby, so we'll see.
I mean, do you see that there are concessions that Lyft can make that would address those concerns, or because it seems like a lot of the language is more just like, no, we don't think this kind of company should operate in New York.
Yeah, I mean that's basically the messaging that these regulators are sort of putting across. It would take a lot for Lyft to make concessions like those. So I think that either they're just not going to operate in the market, or the regulators are going to have to come around.
All right. Well, another week, another ride-sharing drama, as always. Thanks for watching, and check in next week.
See you later.